Hey guys, today we're reviewing the fourth book in the popular X-Wing series, Bacta War. Let's find out if this is a war of epic proportion that no fans should be without, or if it's just a small forgettable skirmish. Stay tuned and find out. Okay guys, before we begin, a quick introduction to this book, and then we'll get to talk about its story synopsis, and then I'll give you guys my thoughts and review of this book with a final score at the end. This book is part 4 of the 10-book series by Michael Stackpole and Orrin Alston. Two separate writers, one started it, another one continued the tradition. This book is illustrated by Paul Youll. He pretty much does the covers for most of these series, and I absolutely love his work. Whenever I do my book reviews, I love highlighting the artist. This book originally came out in February of 1997, and the storyline here takes place 7 years after the original film, A New Hope, which is basically 7 years after Battle of Yavin, the destruction of the original Death Star. So you guys know this is a part of the Legends series. This book no longer follows the new Star Wars canon, but so what? I'm a huge Star Wars fan. To me, this is as real as any other new Star Wars book that you guys may see on the shelf behind me in that review. Without further ado, let's start discussing the synopsis of the story. And obviously, this is a full spoiler-on review. If you guys don't want to find out what happens in this book, I urge you to read it first, and then feel free to come back and say, hey, what is this guy saying? If he was correct here or he was wrong there. I would love to hear all of your opinions. Let's get into it. I got my notes in front of me just to refresh my memory. So previously, following a little bit back to book 3, just what happens in the end there. The war against the Imperial Remnant continues. Even though Darth Vader and the Emperor are vanquished, their forces still remain, and they still pester what is now a new alliance. And this villain of the series, Isan Izard, and her chief officer, Fleary Voro, are on the run. They abandoned Coruscant, the former seat of power of the Emperor. Corran Horn escapes the prison, which was revealed to be the actual superstar destroyer Lusankia, which was in command of Isan Izard. She captured this hotshot pilot, she kept him in this prison, but he managed to escape. Now, Isan Izard and her chief of operations, Fleary Voro, they go and they leave behind this devastating virus called the Krytos virus, which is actually the name of the previous book in this series. Book 3 was called The Krytos Trap, because even though they leave the seat of power, Coruscant, for the new alliance to take over, they attack with this virus that only threatens the non-human population. And this disease is fatal unless the person is being treated by this miraculous healing medicine called the Bacta, which we'll get to later in this book. Obviously, it's called the Bacta War, the fight for this miraculous medicine. Corran Horn returns to Rogue Squadron. He's reunited with his boys. He's like, hey, I'm gonna fly again. And one of the other X-Wing pilots, Tycho Kelchu, who was thought to be an Imperial spy, because he also underwent some mental reconditioning by this very same Isan Izard, or how she's called in these books by the good guys, Ice Heart. Very properly named. And Tycho Kelchu's name is he's being acquitted. He's no longer a suspect in it because Corran Horn is alive. He survives and he clears his, not necessarily friends at that point in their relationship, but he clears his name, and later on together they become friends. The Imperial Mole inside of the Rogue Squadron is revealed to be its former pilot, this female called Erisi Dlarit. And she escapes along with the Imperials back to her home planet Thythera, which she's an elite member of. And this planet Thythera is where this miraculous Bacta medicine is retrieved from. It is grown only on that planet and nowhere else in the galaxy, or at least known places. That is why it's such a valuable resource. None of the sides, the Imperials or the New Alliance, will devastate or destroy this planet because obviously they need the Bacta. But now they have quite a dilemma because this is where the Imperials escape to. Wedge Antilles and the Rogues, they resign their commissions. They are legally no longer part of the New Alliance, right? They were rebels first, and now they are not part of this Rogue Squadron. What they do is instead they go incognito and they occupy this former Imperial base at the Yagdul star system. And it was once controlled by another former Imperial Warlord Zinch. I shouldn't say former, because what happens after the episode 6, as far as Star Wars Legends are concerned, we now have an Imperial Remnant. A lot of different moths and generals, anyone in possession of an Imperial Star Destroyer, whole fleet, they proclaim themselves warlords, and each one says, I am the leader, and the other guy says, no, I am the leader. In case of these books, so far as we are in the story, Isan Izard has the biggest claim to that power, because she has the biggest superstar destroyer, the very same model that we see at the end of the Return of the Jedi, the one that clashes with the Death Star. She has one of those models, and it's obviously next to Death Star. It's a devastating weapon, so she can dictate the rules. So legally, our boys and girls at the Rogue Squadron, they cannot go and hit Thifera and overthrow Isan Izard, because her claim on Thifera is actually legitimate. She's able to go to this planet and convince the general population that, you know, the order of the Empire will be here. Don't trust those terrorists. I will bring order and peace to this planet if you choose me. And this is what the society does. She's chosen to be the leader of this planet. Obviously, with her mini fleet, she has the Superstar Destroyer. She has other 3-star destroyers at her command. And she's elected as the leader. Now, rogues, on their side, they enlist the help of the Booster Tarek and Talon Carter, 2 renowned smugglers. Now, Booster Tarek is the father of Merrick's Tarek, who is in relationship with one other rogue. She's a rogue herself, and she is having a relationship with another one. And now they begin to plan their counterattack. So both smugglers obtain valuable resources, including Imperial-class gravity field generator. This is military equipment that the New Alliance could only dream of, and these 2 smugglers are able to obtain it in order to execute their mission. Now we also have some newcomers. We have these Elskal Laura and her partner Sixtus Quinn, and they're essentially guerrilla fighters. They specialize in subverting tactics. And what they do is they go to this Thifera planet, they infiltrate the general population, and they start gathering a resistance. And majorly, this resistance comes in the form of the Asherin. And the Asherin are the elite Black Op operatives of the native species of Radix. Radix are these kind of like insectoid sentient species who refine this Bacta and turn it into this healing medicine that all the people of the galaxy use, right? So they're there, and they have their own special forces, and they also want to overthrow Iceheart. We also have another boosted addition to the former Rogue Squadron, and it comes in the form of Twi'leks. There's a Twilight Squadron called the Chirdakai, who come in and they join the forces, and they say, we should have joined your side earlier on, but we're here now. We introduced our squadron. Please let us help fight the Iceheart. So that happens there. Now, what happens in this particular book, I'm not going to go into specific details exactly how everything transpires. That would kind of kill the fun, even though this is a spoiler review. But this is essentially a war on 2 fronts. We have the Thiferan ground forces and Rogue Squadron attack 2-pronged, right? It's a 2-pronged attack. One attacks from inside of the planet, from the ground forces, and Rogue Squadron engages in these cat and mouse counterattacks in space that they engage Isard's forces in different locations. It has a rousing conclusion. Obviously, the boys win the day, and Iceheart is destroyed in the process. She's completely killed off. And I was actually like, okay, this is interesting. I will talk about my impression of it a little bit later. I'm jumping ahead of myself. But she's actually destroyed in the 4th book out of the 10-book series. And the traitor, the mole inside of the Rogues, who was Irisi Dlarit, she's also killed in a fight. I was like, okay, that's interesting. And now Thifera planet is fully liberated. The freedom is restored and given back to its people. And the Bacta starts traveling back all over the galaxy. The shipments are arriving to Coruscant, where it's awaited, where the population needs it to completely squash that Krytos virus and completely get rid of it, that nasty, nasty trap that Isan Izard left over for them. Anyway, let's talk about my impression of this book, what I thought of it, what are my general points that I like to focus on and point out that were most memorable to me. I'm not even gonna hide it, guys. 3 books and I'm loving this series. Mike Stackpole is one of my all-time favorite Star Wars writers, and even though I was a little bit curious, because each new book, honestly, is an unknown factor. You don't know how it's gonna go. It might be very competently written, but not be up to your alley. And you could say, you know what, it's a good story, it just doesn't work for me, I don't like the action type, or I'm not vibing with the characters. There could be 10 million reasons why you dislike a book, not necessarily have to do with its quality. At this point, if you guys are watching my reviews, I don't even have to talk about the quality of writing in these books. Michael Stackpole is an absolute masterclass writer. And this goes in or outside of Star Wars franchise. He's basically like a Tom Clancy novelist. The only difference is he's working in sci-fi, right? His genre is science fiction and primarily Star Wars. This is at least the side of the author as I know him. Not even going to talk about the prose, the quality of writing. It's all top-tier stuff. Now let's talk about the story. So what I really enjoy here is that all of the faces behind the Rogue Squadron, all of the people who are involved, even the smugglers, even the military personnel outside who make this war happen and who helped our rogues, Mike Stackpole puts faces to those people. You recognize who they are, and their personal character growth keeps on going from book to book. And it's so fun and interesting watching them grow. It's almost watching like The Expanse when you're watching from season 1 to season 2 to season 3, because it's been written by one author, at least the first half of this series. As you guys will learn, the second half was written by another author, and I will comment on that as well later on as I do other reviews. But anyway, it is very consistent, and you see a progression of characters. We see Corran Horn, this force-sensitive rogue pilot, and his relationship with Mirax Tarek developing. They are fully in love now. They are growing as a couple, and we know that their union is inevitable. It's gonna come sooner or later. And let's not forget, I mentioned earlier in the review, she is the daughter of Bacta Tarek, this very kind of like grumpy, hugely muscular like man who parades in. He always a little bit stuck up, and he's very opinionated that things are got to be done his way because he is, according to himself, expert negotiator and a smuggler and a swindler. That's who he is. He's an amazing, charming character. So it was interesting to see not only their relationship, Corran and Mirax, but also their father in between them. My daughter, she's dating who? Who is this new guy? He's from Corsac. I had beef with his father. I don't like this guy. Are you sure you're choosing him? I don't approve. Very interesting dynamic. It's kind of a long explanation to give you guys between Corran Horn's father and Bacta Tarek. Just understand there was some kind of friction going on there in the past. And also, it was a beautiful and touching moment where Corran Horn, at one point in this book, he travels back to Tatooine. Him and his other pilot friend, Gavin Darklighter, they travel to Tatooine to negotiate with the Darklighter family because they also have smugglers there and they have resources, and they need to negotiate for some equipment that the rogues will need, and now as an independent unit. And there's a very touching moment there where in the evening time, all of the Darklighters gather, right? There's a whole family of people, and young Gavin Darklighter is there. He's introducing his boy, Corran. But something tragic happened in Corran's past because both of his parents were murdered, and he's basically an orphan. And when he sees this reunion of family members, he goes outside to supposedly get some fresh air. But in reality, he's just mourning his father's loss. He's mourning his mom's loss. But there's another Darklighter, an elderly gentleman, who comes out and he says, look, I understand that there's a part of it is grief, but I don't think your father would want you to be, so blue and down at this time, because it's a family reunion, and come join us, be a part of this. And it was such a heartwarming moment there. I just couldn't help but grow even closer to Corran Horn. And our hero of the book, I would say, as far as Chapter 4, Bacta War is involved, is Wedge Antilles. We know that from the beginning, he's the leader of the pack. We obviously see him in the original trilogy. He's there side by side with Luke Skywalker, with Han Solo, with all of them, having that attack on the first Death Star, helping out with the second Death Star. He's the OG. He's one of the biggest names as far as the Rogue Squadron team is involved. And we see him as this father figure, and he has worry for his rogues, his friends, and he's willing now to fight outside of the New Alliance. He says, look, if the government is not going to shift our ways, I'm willing to completely resign my commission, and I will do whatever it takes to make sure my team stays close, they stay by my side, and we win over Iceheart at whatever it takes. We got to win because we got to have back-to-back. We got to make sure we restore Coruscant and all of the people are healed. So I was really so engaged with him. I was really following his quest, and you really get into his mindset as a father figure, as somebody who's watching out for the rest of the rogues. And as I mentioned before, Booster Tarek, the smuggler, and Corran Horn, there's not only just comedic moments between them where it's like, who is this kid? And a younger man is like, your father is grumpy, I don't trust him, I'm still gonna marry your daughter. Besides the funny moments and back and forth, now there is a great moment where the two adults come together and settle their differences. Because Wedge gets in between them and is like, guys, both of you have love for this woman. She's your daughter, and Corran, you love her. She's your future wife, or you're so serious about your relationship. Settle your differences, guys. I don't want to hear any of this. We're about to head out into this major confrontation. It's time to patch up. And this is exactly what happens by the end of the book, and I really enjoyed seeing that. As I said, closer look at all of these characters. Now, when it comes to action, again, I'm not going to go into specifics. There's too much of it. It's a lot of stuff, and all of it is spectacular. If you want edge of your seat, rousing action as far as space combat is concerned, this is the book. Amazing stuff. Michael Stackpole writes it like nobody else. We see how the rogues outsmart Iceheart because she's proud. She has these super Star Destroyers. She has command of a lot of TIE Fighter squadrons. She thinks that she can intimidate and overpower them just with her name alone. That I am the Empire. Yeah, I will defeat you guys. No. And I love how the rogues exploited the use of the Imperial technology for their rousing and climatic ending at the end. Remember, I mentioned that interdictive field generator. It comes in handy at the end. It was just spectacular use. And what I also like about this book, or the series in general, is that the rogues never feel invincible. There's always worry for your beloved characters. Even though there's major characters, there are minor characters who are not mentioned as much in this book, but they're mentioned in other books. They're so well rendered that it's like, hey, I remember this character from the previous book. I hope he doesn't die. And just to give you an example, Nawara Ven, one of the Twilight pilots who was a former lawyer, right? And he becomes a jock pilot as well. He has his near-death experience in Bacta War. By the end of the book, he loses his leg. And I was like, oh man, I hope it's not the war. I love this character. Please don't do it to him. I want him to survive. You really, really worry for this character, almost like Game of Thrones style. And there was another, a Bothan female, which are like horse-like bipedal humanoids. And there's this female, Azer Selar. Her as well. She had to eject. And at one point, I'm like, oh my God, no, is she dead? What is happening there? You're filled with worry because you're so invested with this character, because the author knows how to deliver good story first, introduction of who these people are, what do they think, what are they passionate for, what are they fighting for. So then when you're thrust in the thick of combat, you worry for them. This is what an effective action story should be all about. And once again, this book is amazing here. What I also liked about Bacta War is politics, because rogues on their own are basically black ops, right? If they are defeated and all of them die in the process at the hands of Iceheart, nobody would ever recognize them, and their actions would not be validated by the New Alliance and say, oh, we don't know anything about this. Who are these guys? And it's kind of tragic, right? It's sad. But on the other hand, it's not just rogues, because Freely Voru and Iris Larrett, basically the two henchmen at Iceheart's side, they kind of, like, very smart, they're very conniving, and they're only looking after themselves. And they're almost like plotting in a way, hey, if Iceheart fails, we gotta bail, man. We gotta, like, take our stuff and just leave. They're like two hyenas, two jackals, where the rogues are doing this noble deed and they're willing to put their lives on the line. On the other hand, the Imperials are doing exactly the opposite. And I really enjoy this dynamic as well, these politics of good-natured people versus people who are egotistical and who only look after themselves. Another side of the politics that I really like is that Buster, Tarek, and Carter, these are two smugglers. They're basically civilians, but they're willing to chip in and help the war effort. And I love how they went and they negotiated with the Darklighter family for those resources, because aside from all the posturing and saying like, no, I love that outlaw lifestyle, I will never be a part of legitimate New Alliance government. Inside, they know what is right. They know what needs to be done, and the strength of their character comes through. And you see it throughout the story. I'm like, man, what an amazing character Buster Tarek is. And Talon Carter, of course, who comes from another book series. He's originally a creation of Timothy Zahn in the Throne trilogy. He was an amazing character there, and he's seamlessly transplanted into this series, and I recognize him instantly. I'm like, yeah, this is who Talon Carter is. Obviously, he's looking after profit. Obviously, he's looking after himself. But he also knows at one point, he's like, hey, I got to put my personal stuff aside. We need this. We got to help the good guys. And last thing I want to mention here is that the humor is off the charts. It is so like adult and layered and mature. I love the humor in this book. That I usually don't respond to humor in a book like outright laughing out loud on my own as I'm reading the book. I don't do that with any literature. But with this book, guys, I was like smirking and like laughing like, oh, what is this? Because the last chapter of this book is quite funny. It's hilarious. What happens there is that Mirek Starek, in a hot debate where her father, Buster Tarek, we're now at the end of our story, and he says, well, okay, we won, right? I provided the resources. I believe I should have one of the Star Destroyers, and I will own it. And there is this New Alliance general, Aaron Kraken, who says, through my dead body, you will not have an Imperial Star Destroyer because this is like a threat hazard. You're not going to have it. No civilian should have it. It belongs with the military. And as those two parties are bickering, and then Talon Carter steps in, he starts saying, hey, how about I buy it off you guys and I sell it back to him? This is crazy, crazy charade is going on. Mirek Starek announces her marriage to Corn Horn. I was like, by the way, we got married. And Buster Tarek says, well, you see where this is happening? This young man here, he's taking my daughter. The New Alliance is taking away my ship, and everybody's against me. All the powers are aligning in against me. And it's so clever, and it's so funny. I'm telling you, it was just reading this entire book just for this final chapter. Amazing stuff. I don't think I've ever read anything funnier than this tongue-in-cheek kind of like back and forth dialogues. So in closure, what would I score this book? What rating would I give it? Straight 4 out of 4. I just said it on my tweet literally now before recording this review. Star Wars writing doesn't get better than Michael Stackpole and the book that I'm reading now, which is the next one in this series by Aaron Alston, a late writer who is no longer with us, and I miss him so much. When these two authors are penning the X-Wing series, trust me when I say it, guys, just avoid the fact that none of your favorite top-tier characters are there, like Anakin Skywalker, Luke Skywalker. As far as Star Wars storytelling goes, it doesn't get better than this. It is absolutely amazing. This book gets a 4 out of 4 from me. I don't care if you're a canon fan. I don't care if you're a Legends fan. If you enjoy Star Wars in general, I strongly urge you, just give it a chance. Start with the first book. Try it out. Trust me, you'll be sucked in. You'll be like, oh my God, I hope they make it an adaptation of this and make like a television live action series out of it on Disney+. It is that good. Anyway, guys, let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about this series? Do you like the first half better when it's introduced by Michael Stackpole? Do you like the second half, which is written by Aaron Alston? And I also really, really want to hear, for those of you who read it, what do you think about Buster Tarek and the whole dynamic of the character, how he interacts with the rogues and with other smuggler Talon Carter? Anyway, thank you so much, guys. If you enjoyed this review, please subscribe to my channel, hit the like button. I really appreciate all of your support, and I'll hit you back with other reviews. Until then, take care.